Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents No More Heartburn, the safe, effective way to prevent and heal chronic gastrointestinal disorders, by Sherry A. Rogers, M.D., narrated by Kim Niemi. Publisher's note: in this audio edition, you will hear references to visual elements present in the print and e-book formats of the book. Forward, 2021. Although No More Heartburn was written in 2000, in 20 years it has become increasingly more crucial for your health and longevity. Back then, Prilosec was the first prescription drug to be coined a blockbuster drug. In fact, it was considered so essential that when the patent expired, it magically no longer required a prescription and joined the ranks of other OTC, over-the-counter, drugs that also can destroy the gut, like the NSAIDs, Motrin, Aleve, ibuprofen, etc. So has No More Heartburn outlived its usefulness as a groundbreaking book on healing the entire gastrointestinal tract? Not in the least. For conventional American medicine has failed miserably in recognizing that most diseases, regardless of label, are at a standstill and cannot be cured until the gut is healthy. As over a decade of the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry has evidenced, the gut is responsible for over half the immune system, infection fighting, COVID fighting, cancer fighting, inflammation fighting, etc. The gut is also responsible for over half of the detoxification of the whole body. That's important because there are only two causes for all diseases. The nutrient levels go down and the toxicity levels go up. As long as you have impaired detoxification, you're going nowhere. Healing is impossible. Yet the gut does even more than provide half of the immune system and half of the detoxification system for the whole body. It makes more neurotransmitters of happy mood and memory than the brain does. Yet because our medical system leaves every specialist in charge of only one organ, none of the practice guidelines, recipes that all physicians are supposed to follow for their particular specialties, provide detailed knowledge of the gut, and that includes the guidelines for gastroenterologists. As an example, a psychiatrist who prescribes SSRI medications like Prozac or Paxil for depression is flaunting his ignorance. That's because he's giving a drug that poisons the breakdown of serotonin in the brain. The concept is that if the metabolism of serotonin, one of our, quote, happy hormones, unquote, is slowed down, there will be more available to elevate the mood. The problem is that 95% of serotonin is not made in the brain, but in the gut. So as long as the gut is not assayed and repaired, the individual may never get out of depression. Besides, prolonged taking of the drug is known to potentiate suicide ideation and other undesirable side effects. And no wonder, since the person who started with depression is now also using up even more brain chemistry to detoxify the drug. This silently depletes nutrients, leading to worsening symptoms or entirely new ones, even in different target organs. So he's off to another specialist. The history of medicine shows that it takes about 50 years for a change to come about. That may explain why in the last 10 years my husband and I have interviewed multiple cardiologists in 3 states. Not one of them looks for H. pylori, which is an extremely common stomach bacteria that can migrate into the heart arteries and create plaque. And in reviewing the records for the last couple of years of our readers in phone consults, never once have I seen a record from a neurologist or ophthalmologist treating MS or lupus or macular degeneration who knew that the leaky gut is the cause of autoimmune disease. Since antibiotics are one of the most commonly prescribed medications, overgrowth of fungi or yeast in the gut is very common. For example, overgrowth of any of the dozen species of Candida can 1. Inflame the gut lining, leading to leakiness and development of food allergies, such as the common gluten sensitivity epidemic. But when an undiscovered newly emerged nightshade allergy creates arthritis in a knee, hip, shoulder, or back, the orthopedist is looking at drugs and surgery. He ignores what we know about how to stop the nightshades, which often is the curable cause in 3 out of 4 people, described in my book, Pain-Free in 6 Weeks. Meanwhile, the Candida can, 2, make the metabolite acetaldehyde, which can cause mysterious brain fog and body aches, or 3, create autoimmune disease like Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which endocrinologists are powerless to reverse and always insist is chronic. But that's just because they ignore healing the gut. That's not all this unwanted yeast in the gut can do. It can also, 4, make an enzyme called thiaminase that destroys thiamine, vitamin B1, regardless of how much you take. This can damage the heart or the brain and leave those organ specialists forever clueless as to cause and cure of heart failure or memory loss. Or Candida can, 5, make an organic acid called tricarbalylate, which chelates out magnesium regardless of how much the person takes. This low magnesium then can go on to cause depression, exhaustion, constipation, and muscle spasms that are confused with angina or a ruptured lumbosacral disc. However, the worst symptom from an undiagnosed magnesium deficiency is a sudden heart attack. No amount of cardioversion in the emergency room can restore a heart that is starved for magnesium. That's partly why for 50% of people, their first heart attack is their last one. They don't have enough magnesium to make the heart muscle beat. But even after decades of evidence, the correct test for magnesium, RBC magnesium, is rarely known, much less done, by cardiologists. For it is not in their practice guidelines and is not even routinely given when you show up in the emergency room with a heart attack. More details and how to protect yourself in Is Your Cardiologist Killing You? And The High Blood Pressure Hoax. We are not anywhere near finished discussing the life-changing effects of just one abnormal bug in the gut. By inflaming the gut wall, species of Candida can also, 6, interfere with the absorption of priceless nutrients. For example, one that we commonly see is a zinc deficiency. On an 11-page nutrient assay that we interpret is a test for quinolinate. If it's in the 4th or 5th quintile, it's a sign of early brain deterioration, even before you have any symptoms. The beauty of it is that it's totally reversible with vitamin B6. But you have to know that vitamin B6 does not work in the human body until it is changed to its active form, pyridoxal 5-phosphate. And it can only do this if there is enough zinc in the enzyme. So again, many people may morph into dementia or even Alzheimer's without knowing that they could have totally averted it. Yet having dysbiosis, abnormal bugs in the gut microbiome, may also be responsible for even seemingly harmless yet highly annoying symptoms like insomnia. You see, our bodies represent only 10% of the genetics of our whole being. The gut microbiome represents 90% of us. For 7, the gut microbiome contains 9 times more cells with their genetics than our entire body does. When the genetics of the microbiome are disturbed, this also disturbs the circadian rhythm, which has to do with the sleep cycle, as well as appetite control, hedonism, reproductive physiology, and much more. So what do I think we will accomplish by introducing No More Heartburn in an electronic format? It is my hope that we will reach more folks who can learn how to make themselves too smart to fail in their health goals. The gut is key. As a more current example, we now know of over 6 reasons why the coronavirus will reappear in 2nd and 3rd waves and why even worse genetic manipulations will follow. What is worse, we know 6 reasons why the USA will be the hardest hit. Fortunately, we also know that there are more than 6 stages that the new coronavirus, SARS-CoV-19, goes through in the human body, and we know which nutrients are crucial to stop each one of these stages, all described in the Total Wellness newsletter of 2020. To give you just a sample, One of the stages the virus needs is to find the corona gates of entry that are on your body cells, called ACE2 receptors. Normally, a healthy person has very few of these. But as disease progresses, even if it's something simple like constipation, insomnia, depression, or obesity, this dramatically raises the numbers of corona gates, ACE2 receptors. And the more medications you take, the more you actually become downright corona bait. For example, often when folks are on high blood pressure medicines, they can triple and even quadruple the number of corona gates on each cell membrane. That's one reason why 58% of people who died of corona had been treated for high blood pressure. But you can learn how to cure your high blood pressure without any medications. The high blood pressure hoax. An even more protective stage that the virus uses is to hibernate. It goes into a dormant or latent phase in the human gut. While it's there, it can avoid detection by any blood tests and avoid eradication by any drugs, all while not causing any symptoms. It does this by secreting a special sialoglycoprotein that I call a suit of armor around itself to make it invisible to the immune system. But it is still continually able to be spread by the asymptomatic carrier who touches objects that others will touch and transmit to their mouths. In other words, meticulous hand-washing by the person who makes your food, serves your food, or even sets the table or delivers a glass of wine to you is crucial to your future health. For invisible contamination from the gut is an easy way to silently perpetuate and potentiate COVID. Because of its genetic programming, when it emerges, COVID-19 targets the lungs, causing the microscopic changes that look just like cancer of the lung. Only instead of taking 6 to 12 months to kill the host, like normal lung cancer does, this new genetic creation takes only 6 to 12 days. This is the first time that a common cold virus has been manipulated to cause a quick killing cancer. There is no more crucial time to learn about the gut-lung axis than now. Clearly, having a healthy gut has never been more important to your survival than now. Details, what to take, and references in Total Wellness 2020. For we know what events are important for keeping the virus silent in the gut as opposed to fatally erupting and heading for the lungs. For the body can harbor many potent viruses for a lifetime, from herpes to hepatitis, never letting them erupt or escape. But how long a virus remains hidden in the gut depends on the two main causes for all disease: whether the nutrient levels tank or detoxification is no longer controlled, explained in Detoxify or Die. Then, in the high blood pressure hoax and the subsequent total wellness, the second phase of detoxification. And if the COVID crisis were not enough for the world to bear, medicine has ignored the gut-brain axis, which has been studied and described for over a decade in Journal Nutritional Biochemistry. The damaged gut combined with the newly created virus, as well as with the social and economic upheaval it causes, will undoubtedly fuel not only insomnia and depression, but violence, crime, suicides, dementia, Alzheimer's, and more. Brain deterioration has many triggers that can begin with the gut. Clearly, you can see from just a few short examples why no more heartburn is still important. In fact, even more so. Gut health is crucially linked to brain health, and vice versa, while an essential ingredient for making a person corona-proof, as well as having a great mind and mood, hinges on having a very healthy gut/microbiome. So why am I writing this? I'm not a gastroenterologist or an endocrinologist or a cardiologist. I'm certainly no smarter than any other doctor. It's just that I was sicker. I had over 24 conditions that are considered incurable to this day. I realized that what I learned in medical school was not focused on cure, but on drugs. I had to learn about God's molecular biochemistry of healing, which has been there all the time. In learning how to cure my conditions, I ended up with 4 specialties, which solved another problem of medicine's mistaken restriction of each specialist to only one organ. Have I gone through and updated the contents? No, for the very reason that the concepts in here still hold true, and many have and will have gotten themselves well just using this information. Of course, in 20 years, some of the medications or nutrients no longer exist, and some of the owners of the labs and nutrient manufacturers have sold, retired, or died, or facilities have discontinued or changed their formulations. Since change is a part of life, we have used the monthly Total Wellness newsletter, available electronically at prestigepublishing.com, for 30 years to update our audience as I continually research over 4 hours daily. One acronym that I've created in the last few years deserves mention here. For whenever you are stuck with a medication or diagnosis or mystery disease, merely think. In other words, look for the toxins, hormone deficiencies, intestinal dysbiosis, nutrient deficiencies, or your knowledge gaps, and you will find the answer. As you see, smack dab in the middle of the acronym is the major importance of looking at the gut. For if the gut isn't healthy, all disease can be at a standstill. I have seen this scenario repeated too often in my decades of consultations in multiple countries. Gut health is ignored in all practice guidelines, even though it controls half of the body's metabolism. Clearly, my focus and motivation is and always has been to empower folks to get themselves well, regardless of what label medicine has attached to their symptoms. My goal is simply to help you make yourselves too smart to fail. Here's to control of your health. Sherry A. Rogers, MD, ABFP, ABEM, FACAAI, FACN. Introduction. Why do we need a book on banishing heartburn? We already know how to spell relief, ROLAIDS, or Maalox, Mylanta, or Digel. If those fail, there are the great acid inhibitors that went from prescription to over-the-counter status all too quickly, like Pepcid, Zantac, Tagamet, and Axid. And if those fail to give relief, there is a whole new generation of proton pump inhibitors emerging, like Prilosec and Prevacid, as well as other potent prescription medications that squelch possible symptoms. As a recent New England Journal of Medicine article by specialists at the prestigious Karolinska Institute in Stockholm have reported, heartburn is anything but harmless. In fact, it carries a high risk of evolving into cancer of the esophagus, for which there is still no cure. And this heightened risk of esophageal cancer is not double or triple, but 43 times that of those who do not suffer from heartburn or indigestion. Esophageal cancer is so vicious that fewer than 12 people out of 100 live to 5 years after diagnosis. In just the last 2 decades, the number of esophageal cancer victims each year has increased 8-fold, making it the fastest-growing cancer nationwide. Add to this an even more important fact that has emerged from the research. Getting medical treatment for heartburn increases, not lessens, your chances of getting cancer. Be that as it may, gastroenterologists at noted medical schools still recommend that patients take their medications continuously and indefinitely. Why? Because drugs are the major tools of modern medicine. For example, many doctors view symptoms as a deficiency of drugs, either because the drugs have failed to treat the symptoms or because they have actually caused the symptoms. In response, these same doctors go on to prescribe more, if different, drugs, even though studies are now showing that such treatments can actually increase one's chances of getting cancer. Traditional medicine remains bewildered about why people who receive the best treatment than doctors can offer do worse than those who are not treated. At the same time, doctors seem powerless as they watch the evolution from heartburn to X-ray diagnosed reflux to biopsied Barrett's esophagus to fulminant cancer, knowing all the while that the uncontrollable cancerous transformation may actually be quickened by medical treatment. When drugs fail completely, traditional medicine resorts to surgery. Now, the standard treatment for this transition stage, called Barrett's esophagus, from reflux or heartburn to cancer, is to laser or burn abnormal precancerous cells. But the burning of precancerous cells, like medications, does nothing to identify and correct the underlying cause. Instead, physicians watch and wait, seemingly helpless to abort the progression to full-blown cancer. With 1 in 5 people suffering from heartburn and indigestion and another 1 in 5 suffering from irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, or spastic colitis, is it any wonder that drugs that calm the gut are always among the top 10 prescription and non-prescription medications sold nationwide? Furthermore, when studies appear like the one from Stockholm, which show an acceleration in the progression to cancer by virtue of medication use, is it any wonder that esophageal and other cancers have escalated to the number 2 cause of death in the United States alone? Why should something as seemingly harmless as indigestion progress to cancer? Perhaps the modus operandi in medicine is to blame. Medicating rather than educating patients about how to find the real causes of their conditions and thereby freeing themselves of medications and symptoms causes the circle to close in on itself. Although you can see your family doctor, be referred to the gut specialist, gastroenterologist, or surf the net for instructions on how to rid yourself of symptoms, be medication-free, and avoid a progression to cancer, chances are slim to none that you will find the answers you need. I have written this book so that you and those you care for can understand why you suffer and how to correct the causes of symptoms once and for all. Yes, the absurdity of the current medical system sometimes borders on the unbelievable as physicians, pharmaceutical companies, and insurance companies desperately cling to their belief in drugs as the panacea for each and every condition, even when their own studies contradict them. Nor is this the only example of the illogical nature of traditional medicine today. For instance, a common cause of indigestion, ulcers, and eventual stomach cancer is the bacteria that thrive in city water supplies. Years ago, researchers began treating gastritis, heartburn, and indigestion resulting from this bacteria with H2 blockers like Zantac and Pepcid. They quickly found that these drugs, while making the stomach feel better, did not cure the problem. As soon as people stopped taking the drug, their symptoms recurred. And the longer folks were on acid inhibitors, the worse the stomach bug grew, even so far as to trigger cancer, this time of the stomach and the duodenum. Even worse, researchers found that within a 12-month period, over half the folks on H2 blockers, 61 out of 100 patients, had destroyed their stomach linings. Atrophic gastritis, this destruction of the stomach lining, can also lead to malnutrition and its associated effects, senility, and cancer. Yes, the sick get sicker quicker when drugs are used to mask symptoms without searching for causes. Fortunately, you can learn how to find the cause or causes of your symptoms right here in this book. Ironically, despite research that shows that the acid squelcher Prilosec makes the ulcer-causing stomach bug trigger cancer of the stomach more quickly, current treatment recommendations for heartburn include not 1, but 2 antibiotics plus Prilosec. Bear in mind that Prilosec wipes out the body's natural defenses against the bug, the stomach acid, allowing the bug to grow even more viciously. The bug can do either of 2 things: trigger cancer or rot out the stomach lining with atrophic gastritis. In addition, the antibiotics commonly prescribed for this stomach bug, by causing yeast or fungus overgrowth in the gut, can also trigger a mountain of other conditions that seem unrelated, including lupus, multiple sclerosis, thyroiditis, chronic fatigue, depression, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, chronic prostatitis, chemical sensitivity, food allergies, brain fog, cancer, and many more. Unfortunately, gut torture doesn't end here, as anyone with ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease can attest. True to form, these victims, after years of drugs, hospitalizations, even emergency transfusions, often end up undergoing a colectomy and colostomy and having to wear a bag glued to the abdominal wall to collect stool as the nagging threat of cancer still hovers overhead. But remember, whether your problem begins in the mouth with recurrent canker sores and mouth ulcers or reaches to the opposite end of the gut with rectal itching and bleeding, there is a cause for it. Or perhaps your gut is the least of your problems and you hardly give a thought to a little gas, bloating, or indigestion. You may have much bigger problems that no one can solve or that, as you've been told, you must learn to live with. Conditions such as leaky gut syndrome, LGS or intestinal hyperpermeability, and chronic Candida intestinalis, overgrowth of yeast from antibiotics or sweets, for example, are just a few of the major reasons why many folks are at a standstill. Regardless of how remote from the gut their diagnostic label is, these conditions will never get better until the gut is healed. But since an ill gut presents common to no symptoms at all, folks never dream that the gut is holding them back from ever healing completely. It matters not if you are diagnosed with high cholesterol, migraines, arthritis, or cancer. If the gut is not completely healthy, then you have nary a hope of completely healing any other condition in the body. If you are among those who suffer from symptoms in the gut, over a third of the population, you have two choices. One, you can suppress the symptoms with drugs while the underlying causes progress to cancer or other illnesses. Two, or you can learn how to find the causes and cures in your search for a drug-free, symptom-free life. Some of the solutions are ridiculously logical and simple. Whether your solutions come easily or require more detailed instruction, I guide you along each step of the way. For once you possess the power to heal yourself, no one can ever take it away from you. As I have told patients from all over the world during 3 decades of medical practice, I have 3 goals. 1, to help you get rid of your symptoms. 2, to help you get rid of your drugs. 3, to help you get rid of me. When I can do all that, I have done my job as a physician and teacher. I have empowered you with knowledge that will serve you for the rest of your life. Chapter 1. How Standard Medical Treatments Guarantee that the Sick Will Get Sicker Quicker. It would be difficult to watch a few hours of television and not be convinced that by taking this or that drug, your gut problems are over. You might even be advised to take something before you leave your house for some imprudent eating. The sad part is that, despite being wonderfully effective in providing fast relief, taking the gastrointestinal drugs advertised on TV only guarantees that your condition will get worse. You are not alone. Although gut symptoms may not be a topic for polite conversation, they are among the top 10 symptoms that bring folks to the doctor. In fact, 1 out of every 4 patients has a complaint of something wrong with his or her intestinal tract. Indeed, researchers have found that over a 3-month period, 7 out of 10 households experience some sort of gastrointestinal symptoms and miss 3 times as many days a year from work as those without gut symptoms. Other researchers offer corroborating evidence, with at least 4 out of 10 folks experiencing indigestion. And when such folks go to a clinic, their doctors are unable to find any cause for their symptoms in over half of these cases. If you still think that you are in the minority, look at the pharmacy shelves brimming with medications for calming the gut, sopping up acid, turning off acid, relieving heartburn and indigestion, and easing constipation, and the millions of advertising dollars spent on them each year. Did you know that the top-selling gut drug stops the production of stomach acid, the very acid you need to ensure the digestion and absorption of the foods and liquids you consume? No, you are not alone. You'll just have to learn to live with it. Unfortunately, the 2 leading diagnoses for stomach and gut complaints are not ulcers or cancer, but dyspepsia and irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. Do these fancy terms mean anything more than this to your doctor? I haven't the foggiest notion of what is causing your symptoms, but I do have a large assortment of drugs that will calm and mask your symptoms, drugs you can take for the rest of your life. You'll just have to learn to live with it.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?